Hello, everybody. We will get started on today's topic, which is how do you learn? I do want to emphasize, as I've emphasized many times in the past, please, please, please do not take Kristen or my opinions as facts. Do not believe that we are trying to imply our opinions are facts. We are simply providing our opinions based on our own individual experiences, based on our own individual perspectives. So we're not claiming to be like professional therapists or psychologists like my husband is. We're not claiming to know everything. And we're certainly not speaking to every possible exception of every human being that's ever been created in mankind's goal on how do you learn. And it, as my brain does, I'm just like constant squirrels running around in my head and different things popping into my brain. And recently I had, just had to kind of determine who we are. And I noticed that some kids would learn from adults, from other people, from older kids, maybe who had experience in an area that they were still learning about or something that they were curious about. And then there were other kids who are like the told, hey, don't put your hand in that fire, don't stick your hand on that oven, because it's going to burn you. And then their instincts were, is it really? I got to figure this out for myself. Let me go stick my hand in the fire. And then it's like, oh, that hurts, I'm burnt, you know learn that lesson, hopefully won't do it again. Not to say that that's always enough for some people, but that's something I've kind of just observed, especially as I've got my kids that are like growing up. My oldest is about to enter high school next year, so I've kind of like watched his evolution take place. He's still got some time to go, thank goodness, but I've watched that happen. So that's where this topic kind of came from. I do want to emphasize, as I've emphasized many times in the past, please, please, please do not take Kristen or my opinions as facts. Do not believe that we are trying to imply our opinions are facts. We are simply providing our opinions based on our own individual experiences, based on our own individual perspectives. So we're not claiming to be like professional therapists or psychologists like my husband is. We're not claiming to know everything. And we're certainly not speaking to every possible exception of every human being that's ever been created in mankind. So
Yeah,
like
just
we're,
like with
you know,
all of our lives that we do, we're really just starting a conversation,
Mhm.
right? And we start the conversation by having it together with the two of us, in front of everyone, and hopefully that sparks, you having conversations in your life to share your own experience. It's really how people grow, I think, is by learning from others and what they've experienced and just hearing about it.
Exactly. So I think a good place to start, as we always like to do, is give a little context for why we have the opinions that we have. Like, why do we have the perspectives that we have, right? And I'll start off by saying it's really interesting when I think about the profession I end up in. Sorry, dog barking in the background, of course. But the ending up as a recruiter, recruiting people. I can look back on so many things from literally elementary school, like as young as second grade, that makes complete sense of like why I ended up being a recruiter, long before I even knew this like profession existed, long before I knew anything about it. It was just really funny to like see it that. But one of the other things and one of those things that I did was I remember interviewing people, like interviewing adults. Kristen, you probably like remember, like I would just like sit down and engage, with like adults, right? And like just sit down, because we knew each other since first grade, but you and I became friends in sixth grade. And like, do you remember times when like I would just be like sitting down with adults in some like deep conversation?
I remember there never being a time where you weren't wondering what was going on in other people's heads. And whether that was adults or peers or people younger than you, it was always a question of why. And I had never been asked why very much in my life by the point that I met you. You were
Yeah.
always wondering what was going on in people's heads. And I think this was a struggle for us in the beginning of our friendship because I had never been asked why. And you were constantly asking me when I would do something and you'd go, why did you do that? And I'm like, I don't know. Or you'd be like, what were you thinking? And I'm like, I don't know that I was thinking. Like,
Yeah. And so I think when I, as of course now not being in, third grade anymore and going through life and then ultimately ending up in a profession like recruiting, which could have gone a lot of different ways. Maybe I would have become like a psychologist because I was so curious about how people's brains operated. But I think it was more about, learning from other people. I think that that's what I realized. And in particular, I would talk to people and I would ask questions of people who I perceived to be successful at something. That's specifically what drove me. So if I saw a couple who was married for, 30, 40 plus years, and not only had they been married that long, but they seemed to be like happily married, even as a teenager, I would go to them and be like, I'd sit down with them and be like, tell me what it takes to have a successful marriage.
I remember you
Like,
doing that.
why do you think you're successful? What is it that it requires? And like, and I was digging, like I was looking for like the nitty gritty, like give me the real scoop here. Don't
But like,
sugarcoat
why?
things.
Because then you would want to go do those
Yeah.
things.
And it would also be like, why do I have to go and go through a series of failures when other people have been successful? They've already experienced those things that were tough. They've overcome those things that were tough. And then how do I then overcome those same things without having to go through the pain and the anguish and, and all these problems first to get there? And I think that like there were so many things in life. I certainly did that with countless people in business. When I would see how has your learning evolved through the course
Yeah,
of your
Angela and I are very different people. We're wired completely different.
Mhm.
I don't know how we've made it work all these years, other than just being loyal to one another and having the desire to work through difficult things. I think that, and I don't want to make myself sound shallow here, but you give more thought to things in advance than any person I've ever met. Certainly more than me, because I'm typically dealing with what's the here and now right in front of me.
Mm.
And like I said, I don't want to seem shallow, but I really do think that I'm the norm. I think that it's very rare to find someone that is as thoughtful about a lot of different things as you are. I'm reactionary, I'm emotional, I am caring and loving and loyal, like we said, but I just don't always give the amount of thought to things ahead of time. I think that I have been someone throughout my life that has needed to learn by experiencing pain, and this is something you and I have talked about recently. Unfortunately, like most of my learning comes from having a negative experience and being like, okay, that really impacted me because I felt that,
I've seen it, especially like it's almost more painful for you when someone you love is going through pain. Like you can experience pain and you'll kind of either run from it or you'll be like, I'll just hold my breath until it's over for me.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. If it's you, Archie, or my kids that are experiencing pain, that's more impactful for me than myself experiencing pain.
Mm-hmm.
We just were talking a little bit ago about when you slipped and fell on the ice a few years ago.
Mm-hmm.
I was not really careful walking in the ice or snow or bad weather before. I just kind of would, go about my business as normal. But ever since you broke your ankle, and that was traumatizing for you, so it was traumatizing for me, the way that I walk in slippery weather. Also, I'm older and I'm heavier, and falling will be harder to recover from. But the pain that you went through really impacted me. So, and that caused me to ask in our recent conversations. It's caused me to ask myself, like, why can't I just learn by like positivity or instead of negativity? I don't know.
Yeah. One of the things, literally, because Chris and I, of course, do our best to have at least a little of preparation before we get on these lives so we don't just, get scatterbrained all over the place. One of the things I brought up, because, again, like, I think this is something to dig into, like, in therapy and to talk through and go, what is it that motivates me? What is it that like, what are the things that are creating blocks for me to become a better version of myself, And so that's really, I'm not going to go down that road in terms of like talking about too much psychology behind it. But one of the things that right away like came to the surface was as you have like those initial instincts, right? And then you go into the nurture and the nature combined as you grow and mature and your brain continues to develop. Is what was like your experience with your parents or other your community, like other close people to you in your life, adults specifically, as you were growing up? Was there a lot of conversations? And this is, I'll present the question again to Kristen and she can respond to this. Is Kristen, did you, when you look back at your childhood, do you feel like you had the experience of like your parents and other adults like going like, you can do anything you want to do, like, and praising you for when you accomplished something that was above and beyond, and like talking about the future and talking about goals and like get out there and get after it, and like, you know, what was your experience? And I know the answer of course already, but what was your experience instead?
No, they weren't like really overachievers themselves, and didn't really, I guess, encourage vocally myself or my brother to be overachievers either. Now, my parents weren't really like explaining why. It was kind of do as I say because I said so. And
I had
now
many moments of Chris and I growing up together, watching her just push her dad's buttons, and it would be awkward as hell. And when things are awkward for me, I laugh. So like I would just be there laughing
yeah, so
away,
steam
like
is coming out of his ears, and she's laughing, and I think I'm really funny. So I keep doing what I'm doing. And about 10 years later, she was like, I wasn't laughing because you were funny. I was laughing because you were acting like an asshole. But yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah. So anyway, hopefully Chris and I kind of both sharing our experiences of like when we were small people and growing up, and like, of course it's just being like polar opposite people. I hope that other people feel that what makes these conversations that you get to see and participate in to some degree and witness is coming from a place of like Chris and I, here we are 36 years deep into a friendship and family, and we are complete opposites. I'm like pretty polarized, yet there's so many things that like we understand and agree on. Like it's very interesting, I think, that like for us to agree on so many different topics, there's plenty that we don't agree on, but like I think that there's a lot we
For the
do,
most
and like
part,
we're total
morals and values wise, we
yeah
align.
yeah
Yeah.
So what I want to do now is kind of like segue a little bit out of giving that kind of me. Like I think like most of the world potentially could be more like this than, and to me it's just like, whoa, I don't get it. Like why? So I spend a lot of time thinking about things because I want to know why. I want to understand why. But there's a person in particular in my life who has their life has been a series of I don't think that this person has ever gone to a successful individual in any aspect of life, whether it's family, parenting, business, career, finances, like goals, anything, and gone to a successful person, sought them out, and like sat down and asked them questions with the intention and the goal to learn, enlighten me, educate me on how do I accomplish the good things in life? How do I take and define my own like version of success for myself in my life? And that could be anything. Not everybody's a career person. Not everybody, attaches like finances to success. Success could just like be leading, like have a wonderful family. It comes in so many different forms for everybody. But I guess the bottom line is like this one example, and it's one of many, I would say, that I've seen in my life where they have never gone to another person who's been successful and asked them, questions and probed and tried to learn from them. Instead, what I've witnessed this person do is claim to know everything. Now, granted, I would tell you when I was 13, I probably thought I knew everything. And I've only gotten dumber apparently as I've gotten older, because the older I get, the more I realize how much I don't know and how much I still have to learn. It's just the realities of being a teenager, I think, for a lot of people. But as I watch this person grow, because I've known them literally their entire life, I witnessed them kind of thinking, I have the answers, I know what to do. They are very worried about being judged for their choices. They will threaten to cut people off if you express any disenchantment with the choices that they've made whatsoever. And they will be like fiercely passionate about the choices that they've made, even though I think they know, and like everyone around them knows, like, this isn't good. Like, this is not good for you. And then at some point in time, through pain and suffering, as they've experienced the very things that other people have warned them against, they will then now all of a sudden think of themselves as some pro advice giver to other people, because they're not advising based on them leading a successful life or making the right choices. They're trying to advise other people against, like, a warning sign, like, I did this, this was bad, don't do that, you shouldn't do that, because like, look at where I am. And they also very much will kind of like enter into a victim mindset where somehow their choices they now think were not actually choices, that they thought that they were just like a victim of the situation, and
I was
they
just
had
gonna
no other
say
choice.
that yes, because there's a piece of why they might not ask other people that maybe have done whatever they're doing more successfully. Um, there's a with insecure people,
Mhm.
there's an assumption, oh, they were successful because they just had it easier.
Yeah.
I have it harder. That, and they don't want to humble themselves to really ask, like, what did you do to get this right? They don't want to admit that they're doing it wrong until after the fact, when, like you said, they're claiming victim and
Yeah.
blah blah blah.
And listen, at the end of the day, I'm like this eternal optimist, and I still have faith and hope in people, probably when I shouldn't. Um, Especially for people who are close to me and that I love and I care about. And I'm always kind of like, in my mind, I'm like, at some point, like this person's gonna like wake up and the light bulb's gonna go off, and all of a sudden they're gonna be like, okay, I'm gonna go now look seeking out successful people in life and ask them for guidance and ask them for advice. And then I'm not only gonna ask and I'm gonna process that information, but I'm gonna go take action on it. And I still hold out that hope. I'm probably setting myself up for disappointment. But again, I leave that space. I leave the space for that hope and that prayer, that someday that person who I really care about and I really love will, come around and stop kind of like manifest destiny into not good things, that's going on around them. I certainly hope that at minimum they'll reach a point in their life where they go, I am not in a position to try to offer people advice. Like, giving people cautionary tales isn't anywhere near as impactful as going, I went through this tough experience and I fought my way through it. And here's the work and the effort that I put in. And it was really hard, but I did it. Like, I did it and I overcame it. And you can overcome it too if you're willing to do X, Y, and Z positive things to get your life, even when you've gone through really hard times, even if you have been a victim of a situation that was completely out of your control, you can overcome it. And I mean, think about that. I think that that's like a common bond story, right? Like, when you look at people who have massive accomplishments in their life, who came from nothing, who had no support system, who experienced abuse, who were actual, real, genuine victims, and yet became outrageous successes. It was because they fought through it and they took positive changes and they made positive choices. And I would venture to say they likely were the type of learner where they went out talking and asking questions of people who were successful. They went to other people who overcame the odds and were able to turn their life around and do great things, right? I mean, even if you think about like, if somebody's like in an AA or NA program, one of the big things is they want you to have like a sponsor. Well, the sponsor that they have isn't going to be somebody who, hasn't overcome the odds already. The sponsor is going to be somebody who has been through it and has overcome the odds and has turned their life around. And so, I kind of look at life in general in that way. One is to just go actively out and seek advice from people who are representation of the successes in life that you would like to achieve, and get advice from them, and then take that advice and then put in the work and then do the stuff that needs to be done. And then, but the other part is to also learn from the people who overcame the odds. When Kristen, when you and I were talking about this, you really brought up a great point. Like share the point about like you shared a little bit earlier in terms of like the not really thinking about it, but do you want to add to that?
No, I don't know what you're talking about.
So I had asked you like, why is it that you think that there's some people who don't learn from other people who are successful?
Are you talking about when I shared about learning from negativity or like being motivated by negativity? Motivated to do the right thing, which is opposite from the wrong thing that they've experienced negativity with, or someone that they
Yeah.
love has.
So the thing you shared with me and the thing you brought up with me was like, you had started talking about this earlier, like very early when you were giving context in the conversation, saying how like I was always like somebody who put a lot of thought into things and I would ask the question why a lot. And then in your situation, it would be like it was more of like in the moment. And there wasn't a lot of thought put into it.
I tend to really put thought into things like right as they're happening or right before they happen. For example, this isn't like a learning experience. Well, maybe it is, but like making plans logistically for a trip. I'll make the plans and we'll have like a set way that things are going to unfold. And then the night before, all of a sudden, when it's right there and it's tomorrow, I'm like really putting more thought into it and realizing, oh, we got to change the plan because what I discussed or what I just thought about before isn't going to work because now I'm thinking about it instead of really thinking about it in advance as if it's right in front of me. So I've had to actually force myself when I'm trying to make advanced plans to pretend like it's tomorrow.
Yeah.
To really put my mind in the right space. It's very strange. Like maybe nature versus nurture. I haven't experienced anything so difficult in my life that I have had to be in survival mode, but that's how I was raised by people who were.
Yeah.
So that's like what's normal to me. So maybe that's why I don't put a lot of thought in advance. But really there's no reason that I shouldn't. There's no reason.
Yeah. And I think we do kind of like, pour into our kids, right? Like we pour into them the things. A lot of times we've talked before about like a lot of times people are either a reaction to or a product of their parents. And I see that with you, like you really pour into those things, like, whether it's affirming and complimenting and motivating and telling their kids that,
I over-explain. Here's the why.
Yeah, a lot of communication, and then really going like the sky's the limit and just making sure that they know that that's there because that wasn't necessarily something that you experienced as a kid. All that being said, you had great parents. It's just a different experience of it. And I wonder at that, but I mean, I do obviously a lot goes into what kind of learners people can become because if you experience some sort of meaningful trauma, growing up. And in your formation years, I would certainly assume that that has something to do with, what kind of learner. Are you somebody who only learns from like doing it yourself? You don't learn from other people's experiences? And are you going to learn from experiencing pain versus do you learn from other people's, positive successes? And do you say, I see that, I see their success, I want to achieve that, I'm going to follow their advice and I'm going to seek out their advice. And then you are motivated by like that reward structure where you're like, this feels great. I've accomplished X, Y, and Z. But there was this middle ground too that we talked about, which was like, is that the lack of thought, right? Is almost like I would say a complacency, right? There's like just a complacent aspect of kind of like, I'm good. It's fine. Like,
that's what I
don't
like to think of myself in advance, but when it comes down to it, I'm not good and it's not fine. And I do have an opinion and I do want things to unfold a certain way. And I do have a desire for things to unfold a certain way.
Right.
It's very interesting. And what I get out of these conversations that we're hoping, obviously, a lot of other people get out of listening, if you are, is it makes me think about, okay, what kind of learner am I and what kind of learner do I want to be? And then you can start to put some action in progress to get there. Like, yeah, I'm tend to be a reactionary person who's motivated by negativity versus positivity, but that's not who I want to
Right.
be. Do I have to be that way? No, I don't have to. And not
And I
only
would also
just for
certainly
the
say,
sake of correcting it with my kids, but also like there's plenty of life left for me to correct it for myself. I don't
and I
want to
also say, like,
experience pain anymore.
for those people who maybe do lean more towards the whole learn from other people, learn from, like, seek out advice from people who you perceive as successful, taking that advice. There's also still a tremendous, I mean, life is huge. There's so many different aspects to life, and there's still a tremendous degree of, like, stuff you have to learn on your own.
Yeah.
That's unavoidable. And in those learnings, even with the best of advice and the best even mentors and guide people that you have to guide you in your life, you're still going to fall. You're still going to make bad choices. You're still going to have to face consequences. And I'm feel very much in the thick of it with having a 14-year-old and a 13-year-old, like, and two other little boys, um and watching them and trying to navigate, like, one of my kids is very much in the thinking that they know everything, stage of life. And we've had a lot of conversations about humility, being humble and going, sorry, you've got a whole lifetime ahead of you. Your brain hasn't even gotten close to finishing developing yet. Like, you've got a lot to learn, and, be open and receive advice and guidance from people who've just simply been on this planet longer than you, but certainly from people who've been successful at the things that you would like to be successful in.
Yeah, maybe take some time to observe that, because there's, like Angela said, plenty of things you're going to experience in life that you don't have someone around you who's experienced it before and done it well. So there's plenty of stuff you're going to have to fall on your face with, but
Yeah.
start to think about what you're doing and look around
Yeah.
you. Is there anyone who?
And I will continue to be the hopeless optimist and naive person that I am. I don't actually think that those are bad qualities about me. Like, if, these few people in my life who have gone down the path of, not, being more responsive to pain, you know, not taking advice from other people who could help guide them in a different way. And as a result, right now they're really struggling. I will always leave that door open for them at some point in time to, like, whether it's me or anybody else, to come to and say, hey, let me ask you some questions about what is it that you did, and to not make the assumption that anything came easy. Nothing that I've accomplished in my life has come easily. Not a single thing. I was not born into a wealthy family. I was not handed anything on a silver platter. I was not, just nothing. Nothing was an entitlement for me. Does that mean that I don't recognize the blessings that I had and having two incredible parents and hardworking people who really did everything possible to create opportunities for me? Yes, but I have a brother and a sister. Same thing happened for them. Everybody makes different choices, and everybody could come from different circumstances. It's about what you do with the opportunities that you have, and then how hard you're willing to fight for it. And when you fall and when you fail, are you going to get back up again and learn from that experience? Don't repeat the same thing that you did before. Intentionally do it different. Put a lot of thought into it and keep pushing and keep going, no matter what the circumstances are. And I think if that's the case, then people could, for their entire lifetime, there's every single day is a new opportunity. I really believe that. Like, even in the hardest of circumstances, there's new opportunities here. And granted, let's call a spade here. We're in a difficult political climate. We're in a difficult time in history right now. And there's a lot of, emotions around that for people. And there could be lots of feelings of hopelessness. But even right now, there's still opportunities that are out there. And there are people out there who are willing to help. There's people willing to offer support and guidance. If you're willing to look for the advice and guidance, receive it, take action on it, and do the things necessary to turn life around. And so, that's a kind of a wrap for me. Anything else, Kristen, you wanted to add to
Just stay
how to learn?
curious. Stay curious. One of the things that I've learned is, what has helped the relationships that I've seen thrive, including my own marriage, is being curious about everything around you and each other, and that really keeping that alive will, only lead to good things.
Mhm. Totally agree. Well, thank you, everybody. Thank you, Kristen. Thank you, everybody, for who tuned in. If you don't know this already, I do have a YouTube channel, and please, when we edit this video down, we'll actually repost it up on all social, and you can go to the video itself, the edited version, and it will immediately link you out to my YouTube channel. If you could follow, if you could subscribe, if you could do all the nice things, that would be wonderful. I really would appreciate it. It would definitely make me feel like the time that we take to do these videos would be a little bit more worth it, in terms of expanding our audience. And if you take anything away, also comment, interact here. You know, if you have any comments, if you have any views to share, put it up there, put it out there, share your experiences. I think that like a lot of people can benefit from having these safe and, you know, conversations where viewpoints can be shared and disagreements can be had, and it's not taken as disrespect, and you can see things from different angles. And it's okay, and to not confuse opinions with facts. I think that's another important thing to do, but to be okay and be comfortable with sharing your opinions and receiving other people's views and opinions, and then letting that be something that you process and you think about. So I hope that that's what you guys all take away from this. Again, I appreciate your time, and I'll look forward to seeing you on our next video.
Bye-bye.
Take care.